Well, welcome back, audience, to Did She Really Say That? I'm your host, Katrina
Mm.
van Oudheusden, and I am super excited for today's conversation. Why? Because it's time we had this conversation about getting in touch with yourself, being authentic, right? What is the relationship you're having? What does it mean to be a woman today? These are some of the fun questions we're going to ask because I have brought the amazing Kendra with us. She is the founder of the collective, a global web of women devoted to embodiment to embody wholeness, and she's also founded the Fierce Grace Incubator. Is that correct? Did I say that
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, she's shaking her head. Okay. So Kendra has been studying, facilitating, and most importantly, which is I think one of the reasons why I was drawn to Kendra and having her here on this show was because it's all about practicing the authentic relating, the embodiment of the practices, and that deep intimacy work. And she's been doing this for over 20 years, right? So when you're working with somebody or you're ready to take this next step into what Kendra and I are going to be talking about, you want somebody that is not only walking the walk, but talking the talk. Would you say
Mm.
that's true?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So she co-founded the Authentic World and has pioneered some of the most cutting-edge relationship work on the planet. I'm excited to dig into this.
Mm.
Right? She has worked with thousands of men, women, and couples in the areas of embodiment, intimacy, communication, and full self-expression. Okay? She's worked with organizations and leaders as well as men and women and couples who know that embodiment presents truth, connection, and integrity are our truest access to points of success. I would totally agree with that, right? And this is both in business and in love. So, Kendra, thank you for being a yes and joining us here on this episode of Did She Really Say That? How are you?
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, how did you step into this work? Like, what was your kind of your background, or have you always been in this? Kind of share with us a little bit. Share with the audience this.
I mean, I don't want to be too long-winded about it. And I think anyone, who's worked for long enough, there'll be kind of a circuitous path. And it is one of the things I like to talk with my clients about because I think a lot of times we can judge where we're at and see
Mm,
someone where they're at and be like, I'm so far. And I always want to remind people like that all came over time. It wasn't like it came fully formed, was birthed from my my rib or something. Um,
yeah.
and so there's a couple moments that I would point to, and there is something about relationship, both
Mm.
relationship with other humans and intimacy in that way, but the way that's evolved into this perspective just around everything as relationship that I think is somewhat innate. And
Mm.
I remember, so I was raised in a Buddhist monastery. I lived there when I was very young, but then I also chose to go back when I was an early adult. I left college and I lived in a Buddhist monastery for about 3 years. And I remember, um, I mean, it is a community, so there is a relational aspect, but the practice itself is incredibly solo. And there wasn't a lot of emphasis put on that. And I just remember this one morning, we would wake up at like 4:30 in the morning and we would go to sit meditation. And I was watching everyone sort of arrive and I thought like, oh, I know who that is and I know their little routine and I know how they do that and I know how they wait till the last minute and I know and I was like, what is this other thing that we're not really talking about, this relational aspect? And ultimately, that's what drew me out of the monastery. Like, I think it's part of what had me. I'm like, I'm not a monk. In some ways, I mean, I left the monastery also to be with a man, and so there was that, not the relationship I'm in, and that had its own journey. But there was something in me that was really hungry to learn about relationship and like
Mm.
understand what is going on. In terms of actually diving into working in this way, my ex-husband and his best friend started a program called the Authentic Man Program back in like 2001, 2003. And it was really a program for men who wanted to have better relationships with women, but
Mm.
from the perspective of like genuine authenticity. And because I was dating my now ex-husband at the time, he invited me along with a group of other women to come and kind of be the female feminine reflection
Yep.
for the men who would come through the program. And that was my first experience, like really stepping into offering in this way. And that just took me on a whole journey.
I could see that. I think as, and I've seen that on both sides. I've seen women go through like that intimacy, that time with it, and then they bring a man in to kind of mirror back and like there's this sense of like getting a sense of who you are through that mirror, right? With
Yeah.
no judgment, nothing on there, just somebody like the opposite, the yin to the yang,
Yes.
just being there to complete or close anything that's going on in that relationship or those thoughts that you have. It's a beautiful thing. I've seen it. I think it's beautiful. Probably not to the extent that you've seen it, but I've seen
Yeah.
elements of that throughout my journey of my own self-development.
Well, and I just want to say on the other side, because in one sense I was there as that reflection and that was my role. But really early on, I got to have this experience. Like it would so consistently happen for me that they worked all men Friday, Saturday. And then on Sunday was when we came in as women and we would sit at the front of the room and then all the men would walk in. And this is just how humans are, is I would consistently see, like 1 to 3 men, I'd be like, I don't like them.
Ah,
I would be, it's like in some way I can look back and realize it had nothing to do with them, but I had a visceral response. I didn't like, maybe they introduced themselves, I didn't like it, or I was like, I don't like them. I don't want to work with them.
mm,
Inevitably, I would end up working with them and I would totally fall in love with them, like from
mm,
just like a deep heart space. And
right.
it was rather than just a concept of understanding that this was my own projection and judgment, it was like I got to have a really visceral experience quite early on of just the beauty of humanity and how I don't know. And I think that also has really served me. And I'm like, oh, I love humans, right? We're so quirky and we're so weird and we do stupid
Oh,
things. But like at our essence, oh, I love humans.
yeah. And I would agree. I think I can sit like I was just traveling recently and I just remember sitting at the airport just being amazed.
Yes.
Right,
Love
just sit
airports for
there.
this.
Yeah, I just sit there and just watch humans just do their thing. And I would
Yeah.
just sit there and I giggle and I laugh and you know, I would just it's just being like at peace in the noise,
Yeah.
kind of, and of just observing of human nature. With nothing judgment wise, but just the pure like who's going where, why are they going, what are they going, why are they rushing, what's doing like, it's
Yeah.
all these things that happen in the airport as people are flying or coming and going. It's just a beautiful place to just observe and watch.
Yes.
So I love that. So let's dive into a little bit around the work that you do. And one of the things that, you talk about is wholeness, right? You talk about just being whole and complete or what that looks like. So we're going through so much, I feel like, as women in this world right now.
Hmm.
What does wholeness mean to women right now, like in this time and space, as we're kind of, I think, almost shifting, evolving? There's a lot of, I can't even put my finger on it, but there's a lot of shifting going, a lot of growth, a lot of expansion with women right now. And I think one of the things they are looking for is that wholeness, that sense of self.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And it's tricky. I mean, partly because I think we are in the shifting part. So the idea of putting a name, it's like we don't know yet what's shifting because it's really in the transition.
It is.
I mean, there's a couple things I would say about wholeness. And for a number of years, I've worked almost primarily with women, although I still have one-on-one clients and things like that, even though I started working with men. And then I've started shifting a little bit more into wanting to hold some mixed gender spaces. Partly, I think, because of this, because I think that something is happening where men and women or like all genders doing the work together, there's like an ebb and a flow. And
Mhm.
something about that is coming online. Like there's a real value to the like all women spaces, all men spaces, or the sameness or the safety we can feel. And then there's something about seeing like women coming together and then seeing men do some of the deep inner work and being like, oh. So that's one piece I would say. The other is to me, humans, and I'll just say women, because I think that's a lot of who we're talking to here,
It is.
but we have, I really believe we actually have the full range within us. We're dark, we're light, we're sad, we're angry, we're full, we're empty. We have like the spectrum, and so even beyond kind of the individual personal wholeness, like all the parts of me,
Yeah.
it's exploring what it is to embody, like to actually express all these different parts. And it's great because I was just talking about this morning with a group that I was leading about, it's about an article actually I wrote a number of years ago. It's called The Illusion of Authenticity. And one of the things that I talk about in there is really in any moment, there's multiple things going on. I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way. Like there's at least three, four, maybe 10 different emotions, different sensations, different things my attention or my thoughts are on. There's a lot going on. And I do think sometimes more for women than for men. Like there's
Yeah.
just a broader awareness often. And over time in our lives, like we tend to prioritize some of them more than others.
Mm,
And kind of like water that goes in a groove, then that groove becomes more worn and the water is more likely to go there. And then we call that authentic. So if I'm having a lot of emotions, sensations, but I have a tendency to focus on, um, my embarrassment or my sadness. Like I find a lot of women process all their emotions through sadness because it's more socially acceptable. A lot of men process all their emotions through anger because, bless you, it's more socially acceptable. And so right, I mean, even just taking that as kind of a cliche, that'll become more of a worn groove. And so if a
yeah.
woman's feeling many things, but one of them sad, she'll be like, I'm sad, and like crying and expressing and really being in that. That's my authentic expression.
Mm,
And I'm not going to argue that that's not authentic. I'm just going to say there's other things also going on
there's layers.
that we don't have a habit of giving them attention and airtime. And so sometimes it's not like, oh, suppress and deny that you feel sad, but on purpose going, can you also feel something that feels good in your body?
Mm,
Is there something beautiful you saw this morning that, again, without repressing and denying, like I feel sad about this, would open something up? And that just is a less worn groove. And so we find more wholeness, not because one is better than the other, one is worse, or that we should do one, or we should focus on the positive, or any of the things that it's just like, oh, can we start to explore more of the all of it? And then in that way, I think the reason that I think that it matters um, is is partly there's a way that knowing our own wholeness, I do think we feel more grounded in like the sense of belonging in our own being, in our own body, but also we become more responsive to the moment because actually any part of me can come online at any time, not just the parts I'm most comfortable with
right.
or that I have put more attention on. And
I
then
think.
that feels, it's like a sense of safety, right? Oh, I know that I can actually pull up any part of me at any time.
Well, and then just kind of to have a total transparent moment with our audience too. So I do remember, I think it was about 2 years ago. It was like transitioning from a New Year's Eve into a New Year's Day. And it was such a weird experience for me because I think, no, actually, no, not thinking. I know that as a business owner, as somebody that's been online and in the corporate space and in the entrepreneur space, there was a lot of suppressed feelings, a lot of don't be this way, be this way, don't do this, do this. And so there was a moment 3 years ago that was really profound for me because it was a wholeness moment.
Mm,
It was a sense of deep sadness. And what I mean by that is like everything that I had not let myself feel
mm,
came up. And it came up through tears. It came
mm,
up through just wanting to huddle into myself. But at the same time, I found myself like wanting to reach out and talk to the people I loved the most
mm,
and just get really connected to them in that experience, right? I was like, I'm feeling a sad, but I don't feel like it's a deep Like it wasn't a depression sadness, it was this experience of grieving, maybe letting go of my past self and all the things that I'd been unable to express, and then stepping into this. So there is that, I do agree that there is this sense that we believe this is, authentic. This is authentic. This is who we are. But I also feel like we're still, as women, we're really doing the work now to look at what does all of this mean? Because that day, and it really was a day, it was like from wake up to going to bed.
Mhm.
Um, but there was a sense that I wanted to be by myself, but I also wanted people around me. I wanted to cry, but I also wanted to like just be an expression of it. So there is, I think, a lot of miscommunication around what's a relationship with yourself,
Mhm.
what it actually looks like to bring forth self into the world and not have it be labeled something in
Mhm.
order to be fully expressed. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, even just with that example, it's like going, am I a sad person?
Mm.
No, I feel sad. And maybe it's today, or it's just like, oh, I feel sad. And then I feel hopeful.
Yeah.
And then I want to be alone. And then I want to be with people. And, um, we may or may not get to like flow moment to moment with everything all the time.
Right.
But putting more attention on how we can do that, or the moments when we can, I do think gives us more room to
Mm.
touch on what's true in a given moment.
Okay.
And I mean, I really love that share because I think that, if someone wanted to kind of explore that in themselves, one way to start would be like giving things an and in
Mm.
between. And even whether it's writing it down or saying it out loud, it can be helpful because often before we even express something in our own minds, we think these can't coexist, so I need to figure out what's true. Rather than, I mean, on the call that I was leading today, it was like a woman who's really clear she doesn't want to be with her ex, but she's also sad.
Mm.
And so oh, I know this is the right decision and I feel sad and I'm excited about this and I wish this were different. And to be able to just name those as like, oh, this actually, it's like if I zoom out,
Some
I'm
space.
looking at an ecosystem and there can be a rock and some grass and an animal and a bird all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not a silo experiment, it's a collective experience. It's to be
absolutely.
multi-dimensional, multi-elemental, multi-experiential in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And I think we have been indoctrinated in some ways to be like, you're feeling this, or you have to feel this, or it's wrong to, to feel
Yeah.
that. And that, it puts on us this unreasonable expectation, which then forces, I think, an inauthentic authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, even just to kind of make up a piece about like being a little bit more in the corporate world, there is just some truth to that. There are things that are acceptable and things that are unacceptable or that are going to work or not work. But taking that in, but then we start talking about things like authenticity and living
Mm.
your truth. And people, again, they get caught in something like, I can't stay in this job because it's not my deepest purpose. And I think that even something like this can be like, oh, this is what I don't love about it and this is what I do. And even though this may not be what I want to do forever, I'm choosing to stay right now for a reason rather than judging that and thinking if I've discovered that this isn't my deepest purpose, now I suddenly have to blow up my life and leave my job and, abandon my family or I mean, I really think people don't tell themselves the truth because they're
Yeah.
afraid that if they let any inkling of that come in, then they have to act on it and it's going to blow their life up. And I think that we can begin to just be a little more honest with ourselves if we let it be like the and of many things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that goes back into like you and I, we talked about, going into the world of entrepreneurship as a woman, taking on the responsibility of a business and taking care of the people we're serving. And like it is an and a continual. And
Mm-hmm.
there's this marketing lie out there that that follows us everywhere. And it's this whole sense of fake it till you
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that because
Yeah.
it is perpetual. It is like the one thing I keep hearing is, oh, I'll just fake it until I make it. Because there's this do be have, so you have to, or be do have. Yes. So you have to like be or fake the way like that. Let's talk
Right,
about that.
right.
Share a little bit
Yeah.
about what your insight is around that. Fake it till you make it.
What a great inquiry. I mean, again, even in this is it's just so valuable to recognize that more than one thing can be true at the same time. Like pretty much everything that's out there, it's out there because there was a thread of truth, and then it got taken as the truth. And now this is
Yes.
it's just going to be just like this.
Yep.
You know, so is it true that a lot of women would be served by saying, "Yes, I can do that," and just getting the job?
Mm.
Absolutely. Men do that all the fucking time. You know, or we know the data shows that one of the number one reasons women don't get raises is because they don't ask for them.
Yeah.
Like literally just, and is that a certain kind of faking it? Like, do I think I deserve this? Has someone told me I deserve this? Can I, just like ask for the raise, right? And so recognizing, I think it's helpful when there's something like this to go, oh, this is where the thread of truth came from.
Mm.
And then this is how it kind of got warped or twisted in a way that's not helpful because I think it's maybe Ray Bradbury. Anyway, an author there, and there's that line about like, be careful what you pretend to be because you might find out you become it. And I think
Uh,
that's the danger of following that too far.
yeah.
So allowing for the truth of like, yeah, like if you think you can do that job and you could get paid, like go for it. Absolutely say, yes, I can do that. And then you will figure it out. I have so much faith in like all the women listening to this that you will figure it out. You are
I will.
smart and
That is their
capable.
mantra. I've met so
Yeah.
many women that says like, "You can put me anywhere, I'll figure it out." Like that
Yeah.
is literally what comes out of their mouth every single time. You put me anywhere, I'll figure it out.
Yes.
I know you
So
will.
just say yes, so
Yep.
absolutely. So like that's on that side. Um, And then there is something about like, and how, recognizing like, how do I need to carry what's true about
Mm,
me forward so that I don't lose touch with something essential?
that's a good point.
Whether it's a part of your heart or a relational need or a like not bypassing when you're treated in certain ways. Like, don't fake that something is really, is hurtful or rude or, um, this is a little different than what we're talking about. And again, it's the subtle nature of these. So there's like fake it till you make it. And then I will often instead encourage people to imagine they had what they wanted. Whether it's like, imagine now you're in the relationship that you thought
Mm,
is you're being loved the way you want to be loved, or imagine you got the position you want, or you're making the money, or like if you imagine that, what happens in your body?
mm,
How do you breathe when you imagine you have that amount of money in the bank? Or how do you breathe when you imagine that you're being loved in the way that you always wish you were loved? Or how do you walk into the room if you got that raise? And then to me, those things are not fake. It's like, oh, that already exists in your body.
mm,
You have the capacity in any moment. If your breath softens, if you take a deeper inhalation, if there's an exhale where you relax when you think like, "Oh, I already did that," or "I'm already loved. I don't have to prove like to get the job or to get the love." Then bring your attention to that relaxed exhale more often, and you are being the person that you would like to be on the other side of getting what you want to get. And to
yeah,
me, that's different than faking anything.
I would agree. I think there is the sense of that truest belief, like you said. It's like if I know I can go after it and do that work, then go after it. Like,
100%.
and
Yeah.
the one thing I will say too is make sure it brings you joy.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and this goes into like the personal work too, like the inner work. It can get very heavy and significant. I'm like, we gotta laugh at ourselves. Like this shit it's too heavy, but also we're weird, like it's
Super
cute,
weird.
it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, so if we get into this, it's like, oh, we're gonna go do this, and I'm like, but are you enjoying it? Are you laughing about it? Does it like
Yeah.
light you up, or are you just doing it because you've been told to do it? It's like there's like
Yeah.
both sides of this, right? There's the and again, I love this whole conversation because it's a constant, like it's an improv. It's everything is an and with us. It's like there's
Yes,
this
yes.
and this, and then there's this and this. Like,
Yeah.
and I hope what you're listening, what you're hearing from us as you're tuning in and listening to this episode with us is that you understand that there isn't an or, there isn't a but, there's just
Yeah.
an and. And that comes into what are you creating in your life? Who are you inside of this? And let's talk. This is going to lead into that really weird conversation around the manifesting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're talking about this manifesting, we're talking about creating. It still feels a little woo. Like, let's dive into this manifesting versus creating modality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, manifesting versus creating. I had a mentor who used to say, I can't remember now the word that he used, but it was like either the gist of it was kind of like either you're creating your life or you're at the effect of life.
Yep.
And I remember I heard it and I was kind of like, yeah, and but it's something he didn't say, and I was like, why isn't this sitting right? And then later it trickled down and I was like, oh, there is something about choosing what's so without it being a hopeless, helpless thing.
Yeah.
And going, oh, like um, I mean, again, even in the example I gave earlier, it's like I can choose a job for a lot of reasons and not like all of them, but know why I'm choosing it. Or for me, I
Mhm.
think part of the way it percoled in is at that time was like my children were fairly young, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not creating having a child that doesn't sleep through the night, even though he's like 7 years old, but I am choosing being his mother fully. And so I
Mm.
am no longer like at the effect, like, oh, life is happening to me and poor me and poor me. It's really hard, but I also choose this. And
Yeah.
then inside that it almost becomes like what am I creating within it? But not like, oh, I create my entire universe. That's the work of the gods, and that is not us. Um, so and then I think there is this nuanced piece. I think people get really afraid of admitting any fears or having any doubt because like, oh, that's the wrong energy. But in some way, almost when we push things away too strongly, we give them more energy. They
Ah,
become this
God,
like
that's twice as
pressed
much
piece down in
quadrupled.
the
Yeah.
basement that's just going to come and, bite us on the ass. Um, so, so I think that's tricky. It's not, and this actually goes back to that piece of actually telling more of the truth of the whole story. Is like, I don't think it's that we don't tell a positive enough story. I think it's that usually we don't tell the whole story.
Yeah.
And so
It's
the
the silo
complexity,
again.
yeah, the complexity of my childhood, the complexity of my career, the complexity of being a woman, the complexity of being a mother. Like, oh, this is the whole story. I am neither villain nor victim, but I have been villain and I have been victim and, and everything in between. Um, and then there is that, and again, it's like the grain of truth. So the example I gave before of if I imagine, let's just say like, oh, I imagine I'm being loved exactly the way that I always wished I could be loved. And then something happens in my body. I breathe differently. I move differently. Like my thoughts are kind of different. Something softens in my face when I really feel this, and then if I be that, if I actually put some attention on how do I make this a more consistent experience, visceral experience, I think it actually does change the reality around me. And it does change how people relate to me. So does
Mm.
it mean that now I've manifested my partner? I don't know. I don't think it's linear like that. Like I don't think there's this one-to-one magnetism thing that happens.
There totally is. This is the way we're supposed to be
Yeah.
told. You do A and gives you B, and there's
But like it literally, there are ripples out into the
right.
energetic field. I mean, this is where it gets woo, and this is where I do think it's true. But it's like it is energy, and I'm embodying a different energy, and that changes the energy around me. And therefore, I'm going to have a different experience of life, and people are going to relate to me differently. And I don't know what the outcome of that is going to be, but it's probably going to be good.
Yep. And I agree with that. There is, and for those of you that are listening in the audience, we've talked about energy before and the power of energy, and that, we are energetic beings. And so inside of that, we attract, we kind of repel. Like it's both because
Yeah.
you put out a signal and that energy, and it either is going to attract another type of energy and bring back what it is to you, or it's going to repel something away from you.
Yes.
And you have to be understanding that you're doing both at the same time.
Yeah, and kind of all the time. Like again, just because there's that whole idea of like whatever's happening in your life, you attracted it. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. I mean, there's just a lot that goes on. The world
Yeah.
is, there's a lot going on, but just like all the time there is some projecting, there is some receiving, there is some repelling that like that is true.
Yeah, it's there. So I have a question for you as we dive into this, and I know we're getting wrapped up here. I can't believe we always have such amazing conversations, to be honest, and they flow so effortlessly. So one of the things, as a podcast, we're about like, did she really say that? Bold
Yeah.
statements, things like that. So has there ever been a moment coaching a client around relationships, intimacy, something you've come across where you've said something and they've either looked at you or even done something like, did she really just do that or say that kind of a moment?
Yeah. It's funny, I was reflecting on this, and I don't know if I've really, two things come to mind. I mean, I do talk to a lot of people about sex and pleasure. And so it's maybe less that people are like, oh, like, did she really say that? But it has been and I will say, like, it doesn't necessarily come naturally. I think sometimes people think like, well, that just must be easy. And I'm like, I'm actually pretty shy.
Mm,
It's not just my natural state to like talk about my own sex life but it is a deep value of kind of demystifying
mm,
and being willing to talk about things, especially, I mean, in groups of women. I think sometimes like so often we're making up things. Like I've even had people in groups say, I know I'm so far behind everyone else in the realm of sex. And I'm like, how, like, I don't know that.
yeah, what does
Um,
that mean? What
right.
is
And then more being like, oh,
behind?
I've only had one sexual partner. And even that is like, and I imagine that everybody else in the group has had a lot. And I'm like, we don't know that. So I do think creating like me going first as a
Yeah.
leader in the spaces that I hold opens it up for other people to say things. And then rather than these big abstract ideas, people go like, oh, this is a truth and this is a truth and this is someone else's experience and this is
Mm,
mine. Um, and I have seen people have little responses to the kinds of things I'll say, or like the conversations that'll open up like that. And then the other one that I thought of that's not, again, it's not really a did she really say that, but I remember when I was leading an in-person group one time and I said something that for me was a little off the cuff.
mm,
And I noticed that it actually hurt the person. And I was co-facilitating with two or three other people. And there was a way, like we moved on to a different question or something. We moved on and it just didn't sit right with me.
mm.
It was like everything was kind of fine. But we
There's
were
that word again. Kind of fine. That
fine, right?
fine
Do we want to have like a
word.
kind of fine life? And then the truth is, it was an authentic relating course. So I was like, oh, this is the moment. And
Yeah.
so I came back and I was like, so literally to demonstrate, I went back to that person and I said, it seemed like when I said this, that, maybe you either felt hurt or it didn't sit right, or you didn't like the way I said it, and I just want to check that out and made it like a real moment. And so again, I don't know if in the field it was like, oh my God, did she do that? But I could feel the way that was like, oh, we don't do that. We're supposed to talk about these things. We're supposed to teach about them. The relating happens between the participants. It's not what we do to go back and be like, hey, as the teacher, like, did I hurt your feelings?
Right.
Um, and I love that, it just opened something up that was so beautiful.
Well, and I think when we do that as human beings and we go back and we address a concern, it allows for the conversation to happen. And I truly believe that everything can take place in a conversation, right? There is the sense of discovering to communicate what that
Yeah.
actually feels and looks like per each other, right? One of the things that I've often been, for a way of having conversations, like when you said this, it made me feel like this, and getting
Yeah.
to that feeling of what was there, because
Yeah.
there have been moments. I mean, definitely, I was at a self-development like course for like 3 days, and the person leading it said something to me that was it could have come across very offensive, and it did offend people that were in the room. What
Hmm.
was interesting for me is that's not my experience of it. It
Hmm.
actually, the way she asked the question and the way I heard it
Hmm.
was more of, are we sure that's a truth
Hmm.
completely?
Hmm.
And in that moment, I had a thread that I needed to pull on. Like there was something inside of me that said, this isn't all this black and white. There is a shade of gray in here
Yeah.
that I need to get honest and truthful with myself about.
Yeah.
Because that trying to blame and shame something that had happened, but it was a co-experience. It wasn't a something forced upon me experience.
Yeah.
And so to understand that and really recognize my participation
Yeah.
and a willingness to participate
Hmm.
was a really different experience for me because there was no blame or shame. It was just an acknowledgement that we both participated and with nothing but curiosity.
Hmm.
And not in a sense of control or dominance or to make or belittle or wasn't anything like that. And it just, if she had not asked the question the way that she questioned it and in the manner in that moment that I needed to hear it, I
Hmm.
do not think I would have done the deeper work.
Hmm.
But in doing that, it freed up all of us
Hmm.
because I was able to open basically the closed door or, the secret or whatever and say, is this really a
Hmm.
shame? Or is it just something that we experienced?
Hmm.
And let's have it. So there is that sense of moving in and out. And sometimes I think, and I do appreciate you going back and saying, your reaction like this, can we talk about that?
Hmm.
It gives us the sense that we didn't just get stepped over
Hmm.
and that we're getting a sense that we get a chance to be heard.
Absolutely. The way when you began sharing that story, just that piece of that a converse that it opens up a conversation. And in a conversation, I mean, the truth about conversations is we don't know what's going to happen if they're a real conversation. So it can be a little scary because we
Hmm.
don't know. But that's also the beauty of the possibility of relating is like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I call it the dance. It's a
Yeah.
conversation dance. Like, let's dance. You lead, I'll lead, we'll
Yeah.
dance, I'll follow. Let's see where we go. Like,
I'll trip
let's,
over your feet and we'll make it
yeah,
a move, like
I'll fall down on my face. I'll do a crazy move real quick. You'll do a crazy move. Like, just be in the dance of it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
beauty of it. And you don't, like you say, you don't know where it's going. And there's a sense of having that trust and having that space that says that, we'll whatever it is, let's continue, dancing and
Mm-hmm.
find out until we find that flow and that sense of understanding each other and getting that. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can continue to move forward.
Yeah,
But every
absolutely.
dance has a stumble. Every day, even
Yeah.
the professionals. So I'm a ballroom dancer audience. Even ballroom dancing, we as professionals, we stumble. We'll skip, we'll slide, something will go wrong, a malfunction of some sort of costume piece. I cannot tell you how
Mm,
many times. But
mm,
that is part of the dance.
mm. That's such a great analogy. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. So I want my audience to connect with you because I know that there is such depth to who you are. So I want to give them, so you have a beautiful completion and creation class
Hmm.
that's coming up in the beginning of 2026. So let's talk about this.
Yeah, I over the years, you can see a lot of different offerings that are about visioning the next year and how wherever you like to do that, if you've got a place you like to do it, I say go for it. But I did want to offer one of the things that I saw that seemed to be really missing
Mm,
was reflecting on the last year.
mm,
And again, maybe the people in your audience really have like deep processes where they take a lot of time. A lot of times people get almost like caught off guard, right? There's like the holidays, and suddenly we're like, oh my God, it's New Year's. Like, I need a resolution, or I need and now it's a word of the year, or like, and like somehow January is supposed to just start strong. And I really started to feel just seasonally, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's like, oh, I really think January is meant to be like the month of laying a foundation.
mm,
And to me, to really lay a beautiful foundation requires that we actually metabolize what has been and not just try to build on top of it. Like, oh, I didn't like that. So, like, oh, forget what happened that year. And it's why I hold them as two separate classes. So I
Okay.
believe it's December 29th. I always want to wait. I mean, that's the other thing that happens is people get to the beginning of December and they're like, to heck with this year, I'm on to the next year. And I'm like, oh, let's live it to the end. Like we actually
Mm,
still have, we're going to go all the way to December 29th, kind of depends on where the dates fall. Like last year was the 30th. And it's a 2 hour and it's really a guided journey into
mm,
reflection, celebration, completion, metabolization, and what is the medicine that we can take with us? Like what are we really going to let go of? What do we want to celebrate? What's the medicine we can take with us? And then there's a week in between before the creation call so that there's really time to be within that completion and tip over being into the new year, and then coming at it from the perspective of how do I create from devotion,
mm.
and coming up with a vision from that point. So anyway, I wanted to offer your listeners a gift spot. So there should be a code, and they can join for free if they are so inclined.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say take her up on this, right? Kendra's got, I don't know if you guys have been listening, but I swear if you're driving in your car or if you're sitting somewhere listening, she's got this just such a soothing, peaceful calm about her. And I remember saying something like that to my business partner after we first talked. I was like, I could just sit there and listen to Kendra for hours. Like there's this sense of that. So I recommend, go through the completion and creation, take the time to go through that. In the show notes, wherever you're listening to this, there is a link for you to grab hold of that. There is the coupon code or the code in there that gives you free access, which I think is a great blessing. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Um, but this is your opportunity to listen in and actually, take action. If
Mm,
you've been on the fence and trying to do everything on your own, I would say with Kendra, there's that sense of community and that collaboration. And for women, I really feel like it feeds our soul
mm,
when we are surrounded by other women co-creating our lives.
mm,
It gives us a permission to really breathe. So honestly, Kendra, thank you so much for this incredible episode. As
mm.
always, you're an absolute pleasure
Oh, thank you.
to listen to connect with, and to build a real friendship with. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, my listeners on Did She Really Say That? You know the drill. You want to make sure you connect with Kendra. Follow her on social media. Let her know that you're here. Let her know that you're following her. Even if you don't take her up on the offer, we all know that there's another woman out there that could benefit from her. So,
Mm,
who do you know that needs to hear this conversation that would absolutely love to take up Kendra's offer in being in that space of completion and creation? This is your opportunity to support other women, support us locally, support us, anywhere you're at, and just really help us lean into each other
mm,
and be part of this amazing collective. So, with that, thank you all for listening in and joining, and we will see you on the next episode.
mm.